Our organization is 28 years old, but even at that, we're probably the youngest of the full-service think tanks. When we came into existence, there was already a Heritage Foundation, a Cato Institute, the American Enterprise Institute, a Hoover Institution, and a number of others. These organizations were mainly focused on the issues that Ronald Reagan was addressing because he was president at the time. But there were some very important issues that Ronald Reagan didn't touch. He talked about reforming Social Security only once, got burned, and never talked about it again. He never really talked about Medicare or other health care issues. He didn't talk about disability or workers' comp or unemployment insurance. Now, in some ways, this is too bad because the reason we got the growth of big government in the 20th century in this country and all over the developed world was not spending money on poor people. We got the growth of government in order to provide social insurance to the middle class, the kind of insurance that they used to get from families back in previous centuries, and that they decided they couldn't get adequately from the private marketplace. So we, throughout the 20th century, build up these major government-run insurance programs, and by the time we get to the end of the century, we realize we've promised way beyond our means to fund. We had huge unfunded liabilities in this country and all over the developed world. Europe, in fact, is in worse shape than we are. And these are the problems that the NCPA found were being neglected. They weren't being studied when we first came into existence. So one of our very important goals was to find the best scholars at colleges and universities around the country, put them to work, and find the solutions. And what they all seemed to agree on, by the way, was that the solution to our social insurance problems has to involve funded programs where each generation pays its own way, each family pays its own way, each individual pays his own way, and then and only then do we start turning to government. And we think we're better prepared than any other organization right now to address these programs. We believe our country is headed toward a perfect storm. Three issues coming together in conflicting ways. One of the issues is health care, which is rising at twice the rate of growth of our income. And eventually, if we stay on that path, it will crowd out everything else we want to consume. The second issue is entitlement spending, where we have made promises without any savings, no investment, promises that go way beyond our ability to pay. And the third issue is taxes, the taxes that will be needed to pay for all those promises, and that tax burden is way beyond the ability of taxpayers to shoulder. So these three issues are coming together, and the Congress is going to have to deal with them, the President is going to have to deal with them, and the question they're all going to ask is, how do we get from where we are now to an acceptable solution? And at the NCPA, we believe we need fundamental change. We need to move from a Ponzi scheme chain letter approach to financing these programs to a funded approach where each generation saves and invests and pays for its own retirement benefits. Overall, each generation should be paying its own way, each family should pay its own way, each individual should pay his own way. And only after you go through those three filters should people be going to the government for help. Now, we have assembled some of the best and brightest scholars from around the country on this problem. Thomas Saving at Texas A&M heads a group of economists. Professor Saving was a trustee of Social Security and a trustee of Medicare. He understands these programs inside and out and has impeccable credentials. Professor Lawrence Kotlikoff at Boston University has modeled the tax system, alternatives to it, the VAT tax, the sales tax, the flat tax, and we rely on him for tax alternatives, and we rely on him as well for analysis of the entitlement programs. Dr. Estelle James, former World Bank economist, has studied Social Security reform all over the world. She's probably the world's top international expert on how to privatize these programs. We think we've identified the best people. We think we have the best answers. We're putting it in a way that people can understand. We want the ideas to be user-friendly, and we're going to be taking these ideas to Washington in the very near future. The leverage points for the NCPA have been organization, communication, and marketing. On the organization side, we're different from most of the older think tanks. In the old days, the philosophy was, let's bring everybody together and put them under one roof. And when there was no internet and communication was difficult, that seemed to make some sense. I myself was under a roof at the Hoover Institution as one of their scholars for a while. But when the NCPA came into existence, we realized we couldn't afford to put a lot of people under one roof. And when the internet became available, we realized that people communicate very quickly with each other, even if they're in very distant places. Today, our organization is called a think tank without walls. We do not employ most of the scholars that we work with. We let the university pay their salaries and their overhead, and we pay the marginal cost of what we want. And that allows us to go out and pick the very best people, not people who we just happen to have on our staff. The best people with the best ideas, and it's worked very, very well for us. And it's a much more successful model, I believe, than the old model, especially in the internet age. On the communication front, we started out with a lot of focus on TV and radio. Our organization sponsored quite a few of the William F. Buckley firing line shows. I was Bill Buckley's debating partner, as was our chairman, Pete DuPont, on a number of national 2-hour firing line debates. We debated Social Security privatization, educational choice, and ending the welfare state, and many other issues. Then we've also had a lot of experience using the radio to communicate with a lot of people, and we did that especially during the debate over Obamacare. But probably where we're more focused today is on the internet, and we do more communication online than any other think tank that I know of. We use Facebook, and we use Twitter, and we use other social networking devices to get people's attention. I think the verdict is still out on what difference all that will make, but for us it's a way of bringing people back to the site, bringing them back to the John Goodman Health Policy blog and to our other blogs, and bringing them back to think tank reports that we want them to see. So we're fully engaged with social media, and we're trying to find out what works and what doesn't. We probably send out about 2.5 million email messages every week. Every business morning, we are emailing to 500,000 people Daily Policy Digest. It summarizes key think tank reports, key research, new research findings that appear in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, for example. Daily Policy Digest goes to key people in Capitol Hill, it goes to people at the Wall Street Journal, people at Fox News, people all over the country. And then once a week, we have another 500,000 people that we email. People coming to our think tank average about 200,000 new visitors every month. And at my blog alone, we're getting about 50 or 60,000 visits per month. We have at our site organized the largest online public policy library on the internet, because those Daily Policy Digest summaries of all those think tank reports are then archived and organized. So basically, we've organized the best research of all the different think tanks and all the different universities, and it's very user-friendly, and there's nothing else like it on the internet. We believe that the blogosphere is very important, and we're more focused on that than other think tanks. The John Goodman Health Policy blog is the premier right-of-center health policy blog. It's the place where people from the right and left vet pro-free enterprise ideas on healthcare. And then the third issue is marketing. We've always believed, and at the NCPA this has been a higher priority than some other organizations, we believe that an idea has to be understandable by the general public. You know, the health savings account idea is in principle complicated, but we found ways to communicate the idea so that people could understand it, and now it's almost a household word. Roth IRA, again, it potentially is quite complicated, but we found a way of talking about it in a way that people could understand. So there are two NCPA ideas that have been highly successful because we marketed the concept, and the concept now is much better known than we are. So to us, it's been very, very important not only that we come up with the really good ideas, but we have a way of communicating them to the Congress, to the executive branch, and to the general public. We are effective because we find the best people to study public policy problems, and we use them in a very cost-effective way, and then we market aggressively what they have to say. And those three techniques are very important. Now, the more traditional think tanks have have a model of bringing everybody under one roof, of employing them. Those that are in Washington, we've got them all employed in Washington. One of the difficulties of being in Washington is that people tend to be very, very influenced by what they think Congress will and won't do. And the problem with that way of thinking is that what Congress will or won't do today may be very different than what you can do next year or the year after that. So we want to find people who are very bright, who can solve problems. We don't want them to worry about what's practical or not practical. We want to know what the solution is. And then when the time comes, we'll go to Washington and show members of Congress why this is the right thing to do. We want to be able to turn to the best person in the country when an issue arises, and we don't want to have to rely on somebody who is our employee. And then we want the university to pay for the overhead and the salary of that person, but we pay the marginal cost of the work that we want done. And then we spend a lot of time working with these scholars so that they can explain their ideas in a way that the general public can understand. We like for them to be able to talk to newspaper reporters, to be able to go on the radio, to be able to go on TV, and we want the ordinary viewer to understand what they're saying. And quite frankly, sometimes it takes a lot of work to get from here to there, but we think we've been very successful with it. How do we measure our success? One way is to look at the laws that Congress passes, the laws that state legislators or even city councils pass in response to the work that we have done. Because of the NCPA's concept of health savings accounts, 23 million families are now managing some of their own health care dollars. Because of the NCPA's concept of the Roth IRA, there's $250 billion now in the market that's been invested and will never be taxed again. Because of another NCPA idea, 78 million baby boomers will reach the retirement age and they will be able to keep on working without losing their retirement benefits. And because of an NCPA Brookings coming together, left-right coalition, the 401k law has now been completely changed so that employers can automatically enroll their employees in these plans and put them in diversified portfolios and not worry about being sued if the market goes down. So that's very important because in the future then employees will have larger returns and safer returns than under the old system. So these are all examples of work that we have done at the NCPA and major policy changes that have occurred that most people would say would not have happened but for us. It's not the only way we measure our success. We look at how many other people around the country have been influenced by our ideas. You know, when we first proposed the idea of the health savings account back in the early 1990s, everybody was against us. All the large insurance companies, the Chamber of Commerce, the American Medical Association. It was that we were all alone. But by the time we reached the end of the decade, almost everybody had flipped, and all the major insurance companies, the Chamber of Commerce, the doctors, they all decided this is a great idea. So in just 10 years' time, we made a huge impact on public thinking on this question, and then eventually, of course, we got the legislation that allowed everyone to have the account. We also measure our success by the number of people who want something from us, especially over the internet. There are close to 500,000 people who subscribe to Daily Policy Digest, which is our daily summary of think tank research. It's put out in a very user-friendly way. So that's 500,000 people who say we want to look at this every morning. There's another 500,000 people who get a weekly message from us. We look at how many people come to our site, about 200,000 visitors per month. About 60,000 are coming to the John Goodman Health Policy blog, which is a unique, one-of-its-kind, right-of-center health policy blog. So all of this is an indication of the fact that we are meeting people's needs. We also monitor what other people say about us, particularly the media, both the online media and the traditional media. Is there an Associated Press story that talks about one of our studies? Does USA Today talk about one of our studies? Is there an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal that relies on facts that we have produced? And we actually count up the number of lines of type that's devoted to our studies. And we actually have a way of estimating what it would have cost had we bought that much space for advertising. And it turns out that if we went out and purchased that much space, I think over the course of a year it's more than $100 million. So it's many, many times our budget. And so by that measurement, we're doing quite well in influencing what others read and see and hear. And so we're quite pleased with that result. Finally, we have quite a number of unique student programs. For example, the NCPA has the largest online high school debate program on the internet. And we're servicing thousands and thousands of students. During the debate season, there are 1.5 million hits a month just on our student debate site. And so we monitor the number of students who come to that site, how many students give us their email address, how many students come to the chat rooms. We have other student programs. We have an essay contest that we've just started this year. We have internships. We have a summer program with General Tommy Franks to develop leaders that we do in conjunction with Oklahoma Christian College. And so we're interested to know how many students are interested in these programs, how many students send in their resume and ask to be considered, and it just keeps growing every year. I think one of the ways in which we get misunderstood is that the national news media likes to put the word conservative in front of our name. And they do that with most right-of-center organizations, but they never put liberal in front of the name of a left-of-center organization. And the problem we have with it is it makes it sound as though that ideology is driving what we do, and that's not true. It is true that we think markets work. It is true that we think economic incentives are important. But it's also true that we're looking for practical, common sense solutions to public policy problems. And so we're driven by what works, not by ideology. We've had some success at reaching to both sides of the aisle. The NCPA and the Brookings Institution came together and made possible the changes in the 401k law, which now allows employers to automatically enroll their employees in 401k plans with diversified portfolios. The health savings account idea is something we came up with, and it works. And 23 million people are managing their own health care dollars. They manage those dollars better and more conservatively because it's their money than they do when they're spending their employer's money. But the people managing those accounts probably don't think of themselves as Republican or Democrat or conservative or liberal. It's just a practical tool. And most of the ideas that we come up with are like that. They're practical solutions to complex problems. In our lecture series in Dallas, we like to have a balance of opinion. We had James Carville and Mary Madeline in last year. I interviewed them. They were great. We had Alan Simpson and Erskine Bowles, the Democrat and Republican, who chaired President Obama's Debt Commission, and that was before a national C-SPAN audience, and so you had both parties represented. We're going to have Cal Thomas and Bob Beckel in the near future, and there's the conservative and liberal point of view. And we like to do those sorts of things. We welcome, a broad spectrum of opinion. Certainly at my blog, you're going to see a broad spectrum of opinion among the people who comment there. So we wish that the national news media would see us as simply people who are objectively trying to find real answers to real problems. In the think tank world, it's hard to patent an idea, and therefore, if one of your ideas becomes adopted, if it becomes law, it's hard to know, well, who exactly was responsible for that. Politicians normally like to take credit for the things they pass, and they don't tend to single out others as being the source of those ideas. But for the most part, I think people in the policy community would point to at least 4 things that would not have happened, 4 major policy changes, but for our organization. Because of our idea of health savings accounts, there are now 23 million families who are managing their own health care dollars, and the health savings account concept is the fastest growing product in the health insurance marketplace. Because of our idea of the Roth IRA, there's now $250 billion in the stock market. It's been taxed once. It will never be taxed again. It's an increasingly popular way to save for retirement. Because of another NCPA idea, 78 million baby boomers will now be able to reach the retirement age and keep on working without losing their Social Security benefits. And because of the NCPA coming together with the Brookings Institution, we've had major reform in our 401k law, and employers can now automatically enroll their employees in a 401k plan with a diversified portfolio. And so future workers will have larger returns and safer returns than under the old system. Now, we've also had ideas that we thought were quite good and quite influential that did not become law. In the early 1990s, the country was in a recession. People on Capitol Hill wanted to know what we could do to get out of it. We got together with the Chamber of Commerce and we suggested 5 ideas. One of them was a capital gains tax cut, and they didn't really need us to think of that. A second idea was the Roth IRA, which again, they wouldn't have thought of on their own and was uniquely our idea. Depreciation indexing, which is a complicated thing that makes investment more rational under the tax code. That never did become law, but nonetheless was an influential idea. Allowing seniors to keep working and receive Social Security benefits, that was successful. Rolling back the Social Security benefits tax, that was not successful. But these 5 ideas became immediate legislation. There was a Wallop delay bill, there was a Graham-Gingrich bill, there was a Kasten bill, and those 5 ideas also became the tax core, which was the heart of the contract with America. So even though they didn't all make their way into law, they certainly influenced the thinking of people in Congress, and those ideas were very influential. Organizations like ours have 4 problems, and I call them the 4 M's. It's management, marketing, media, and money. Management is the scarce resource in the whole nonprofit world because most people can make more money in the for-profit world if they're a good manager. And even within the nonprofit world, if you're really good at management, you're more likely to go run a hospital or a university than to be in a think tank. So we never have the managerial talent that we think we need. Marketing is difficult because I'm in the idea business, and it's hard to sell ideas. Ideas are complicated things. Much easier to sell soap. But sometimes we figure out how to sell an idea the way you sell soap, and we've been successful at it. The media is a problem because the media naturally resists right-of-center ideas. And I'm in healthcare. A lot of what we do is focused on healthcare, and there are no right-of-center healthcare reporters. So there's a lot of resistance to what we have to say there. And then finally, money is a problem. We never have enough. We're a nonprofit. We have to knock on doors. We get no money from government, and we're always finding that we are unable to do everything we'd like to do because of financial restraints. Being outside the Beltway is a challenge for some donors because they think that Washington is where things happen. And what I try to explain is that the really fundamental forces that change the world are ideas, not politicians. Politicians respond to ideas, not the other way around. And if you're in the idea business, sometimes it's better being outside of Washington. People inside the Washington Beltway become slaves to whatever Congress is talking about. Not all of them, but there's considerable pressure to do that. And that means they're not thinking creatively about how to solve problems. We want the scholars that we work with to not worry about what they think is practical or impractical. Don't think about what Congress will or won't do. Simply tell us what are the best solutions, and we get better work that way. You know, the biggest domestic public policy problem we have are the entitlements programs. We've made promises that we are unable to pay for. And then within the entitlement sphere, the single biggest problem is health care. And these are the areas where the NCPA has focused a great deal of attention. over a period of 28 years. In Social Security and Medicare alone, there is a $107 trillion unfunded liability looking indefinitely into the future. That's 6.5 times the size of our entire economy. Most of that, by the way, is Medicare. About $90 trillion is Medicare. And for entitlements generally, health care is the central issue. Now, most organizations that are right of center tend to look to our organization for leadership on health care issues. And we are the leader, and we've given it the most thought. We're the only organization that has thought about how you turn Medicare from a chain letter into a funded system. And it's not easy. We've done it 5 times, and we keep getting better as we look at it more carefully. But it takes money to do these things. The economists down at Texas A&M hire people to do the modeling, and it's an expensive process. And we need more funds to do that. Unfortunately, on the other side of these issues, hundreds of millions of dollars is being spent by ARP and by other special interests trying to keep things exactly like they are. And our need is to convince people that ideas matter, that serious thought has to be given to how to do this. And we need funds in order to begin to fight the intellectual fight. And beyond that, I believe that the public policy debate is shifting to the blogosphere. The John Goodman Health Policy blog is the single most important blog in healthcare. It is certainly the place where right-of-center ideas get vetted by both the left and the right, and there's a lot of traffic to that blog. But the liberal foundations are pouring money into left-of-center health blogs. We need to find some resources so that we can continue to engage the battle in the way it should be engaged. And finally, I would say that we need to think about the next generation. We have some terrific programs for students, but we're not doing all that we could do. We'd love to be able to carry our debate program to inner city schools to show young minority kids how they can become effective speakers, how they can think through an argument, how they can disagree with each other without being disagreeable. We would like to expand our student intern program, where students come and work in our office, and they work in the Washington office. They learn what think tanks are like, what ideas are like. And then we have our summer program with General Tommy Franks, where we have leadership training, and that's an important program as well. And we find that we're just having to turn down students because we don't have the funds to give out every scholarship we'd like to give or to hire every intern that we'd like to hire. That's the next generation. They need to learn about the benefits of individualism and free enterprise, and with more funds, we could do a better job of it. You know, every day when I go to work, I think of things that I wish we could do that we can't because we don't have the people, we don't have the staff. You know, just about every state has someone calling our office saying, well, can you help us with reforming our malpractice laws? Or can you show us how to convert our health insurance system into one in which insurance is portable and employees can take their insurance with them from job to job? And we're only focused on a few states. I wish we could focus on all 50. But for the public policy world in general, we need to engage the healthcare debate. On the blogosphere, the John Goodman Health Policy blog does not have the resources that other blogs have. We need more people. We need more researchers. We need more technical staff. We're really operating on a shoestring budget. The other day, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation made a major grant to one of the blogs on the other side of these issues. We ought to be able to send people into the various states with our innovative ideas for how you reform the medical malpractice system, for our innovative ideas on how you turn health insurance into portable insurance the employees can take with them as they go from job to job. And then at the national level, we've done a lot of good work on Medicare, but nothing like what could be done. And we really ought to have people focused on all of the entitlement programs, on the disability program, on Medicaid, on workers' comp, on unemployment insurance. All these social insurance programs are being mismanaged. They create perverse incentives for people. We've done a lot of good work in each of these areas, but we haven't done the work that we could do. And in the blogosphere, the blog is great. The John Goodman Health Policy blog is the best right of center health policy blog there is. In fact, it's the most interesting health policy blog there is. But the other side's pouring lots and lots of money into socialist rhetoric and left of center thinking on health care, and that's the most important issue of our day. We have the largest single online debate program on the internet, and it's all free. And there are some other programs, not as large as ours. A lot of them charge money to students. We think it's important that this be a free service because the students that can't afford to pay $100 are the students we want to reach. We're reaching a lot of them. We get 1.5 million hits at this site during the debate year. But there's an even greater need to reach students at inner city schools where there isn't even a speech teacher, let alone a debate teacher. And I believe that there are a lot of students in these schools that could be liberated from an environment that's not very good. And if they could go to tournaments and debate students from other schools, they would begin to realize that there's some value in being able to understand ideas, articulate an argument, defend your position. And those are the kinds of intellectual skills that students need in order to do well in life. So I think it's a program that can be very liberating. But right now, we're only operating over the internet on this program. I'd like to be able to expand this, to put people on the ground, to be able to go to the high school and talk to the teachers and the students, and we would greatly expand our impact. We're just not devoting enough attention to these programs. We're doing what we can, and we're doing excellent work, but we ought to have 5 or 10 times the number of people working on these problems as we now have.